Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga show, brought to you by Over the Bar. Checking in this evening for another match week fantasy football special with myself and Runa tuning in. Runa, how are you doing this evening?
Very good, thanks. Looking forward to some good fantasy talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really starting to get into the pinch, squeaky bum time, whatever you want to call it, for all the budding fantasy football players out there of the game and of course of the Bundesliga season. It's really hotting up, so loads to cover for us this evening and on the channel in general. Before we get into it and start going through all the different player tips from Runa, please do make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. So like the show, give it a thumbs up, really helps us with algorithms and all sorts of fun things like that on YouTube. So make sure you smash a thumbs up. Comment along if you've got any questions during the show. We'll try and get to them for about half an hour roughly that we're on screen. Or if you miss us live, pop the comments in afterwards, and myself and Marina will make sure we get to it hopefully before the Friday evening kickoff. And of course, press the red button to subscribe to the channel to not miss out on anything, especially tomorrow night's watch along. Me and Mark will be back tomorrow evening. Bochum versus Dortmund watch along. Make sure you tune in for that massive game at both ends of the table. So you have been warned. Watch along tomorrow evening. Make sure you tune in and join in. And of course, make sure you check out the brilliant Bully News for all the different fantasy football articles, long reads, tactical analysis from our good friend Peter, and much more. And check out Bundesliga Boxes, who we reminded you of that. I think it's batch 29 has just come out. So our good partners, go check them out on Twitter or go to the website if you want to get yourself a fresh, authentic German football top, all the way from Bundesliga, all the way down to Regional Liga. And now that we've got through all that delightfulness, Rena, we can crack on with your first picks for this evening. And as per usual, we'll be starting with defenders, which are going below at the bottom of the screen right now. And as per tradition, we'll start with budget and then move on to mid-price and premium. So away you go, Runa.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say that I think this match day is pretty tough, actually. I had a kind of hard time to find some good picks this time around because I think the fixtures are a bit difficult to predict and there are some injuries, and yeah, it's just a tough match day, I think, in general. But yeah, with that said, moving on to my budget pick, who is Joshua Wagnerman, who I mean, Stuttgart were far from impressive against Augsburg last time out. I think they disappointed me, at least, considering all the injuries Augsburg had, and felt like Stuttgart were on a good streak and seemed like the stronger of the two sides on paper before the game. But I don't think they lived up to the expectations. But still, Wagnerman actually did quite well. Picked up 8 points. So that means in his last 3 games, he's on 48 points, which is crazy, especially considering his price tag. So he's a really informed player. He's very involved in everything Stuttgart do, basically both defending and attacking. And he was much more involved than Sosa was in that game, who's usually the guy to look out for fantasy-wise if you're looking for a Stuttgart defender. So I think Wagnerman is one of the most informed players in the game at the moment. And at the same time, Gladbach have a lot of injuries, much like Augsburg had last time out. So Benzebaini, Kone, and Thuram are all expected to miss out, and obviously they're all very important players for Gladbach. So that should definitely give Stuttgart a boost, and to me they're pretty clear favorites for that game. So I think, yeah, they need the points. Gladbach are, I mean, stuck in mid-table. Not real. I mean, they're not really in danger of getting relegated, but not in contention for Europe either. So. Much more at stake for Stuttgart, which I think also speaks for them. That's also a thing to consider at the stage we're at in the season. I think whether the teams you invest in actually have anything to play for, what are their motivation, and I think Stuttgart should have a lot of motivation to win this game. Mid-price pick is Juranovic from Union Berlin, and Union actually have a pretty tough matchup against an informed Leverkusen side. Still wanted to mention Juranovic nevertheless because I think he's he's a player to watch, not just for this match day, but for the rest of the season. Especially because ever since Union were eliminated from the Cup and the Europa League, Fischer hasn't rotated as much, and that makes sense. Of course, he doesn't need to worry that much about giving all players rests, and that has led to Jovanovic being a safe starter at the right wing back position for the past few match days. Fischer has said himself that Jovanovic is currently ahead of Trimmel in the pecking order on the right side. And yeah, Jovanovic is on penalties for Union Berlin, and that's always a good thing, especially if you're a defender. And he scored 4 goals and provided 3 assists in 14 games for Union Berlin already. So pretty solid numbers for a defender. So I mean, if you're not investing in him this week because of the matchup, then he's certainly a player to consider for the weeks to come. And then finally, João Cancelo. I also considered Benjamin Pavard because obviously with Alphonso Davies likely to miss the rest of the season through injury, Cancelo should be nailed on to start at the left back position for Bayern, and obviously they have been pretty poor lately. But
they have.
If we know Bayern and if we know them right, it's just a matter of time before they start winning again. And I know I said something similar last week, and then they went out to disappoint against Mainz. But this fixture, I mean, last time out at least it was against a pretty informed Mainz side. This time it's a different kind of game. They're at home against Hertha, who are really struggling, as we all know. So not having Cancelo for that game, I think, would be a pretty big gamble.
Yep, absolutely. Completely agree in terms of getting Cancelo into the team. Just making sure that we haven't got any live questions. I know we had a few asked before the show, so I'll come to that just in a moment. So any other defender picks, Rune? I know you said it's quite a hard match week to kind of predict results wise. Any other ones almost make your list that you've just gone through?
Yeah, as I said, Benjamin Pavard is a player who I had him in my team before he was suspended. But the question is if he'll actually play. If he'll play as a right back, then he'll be pretty good option too, almost as good as Cancelo. But I've seen some lineup predictions saying that he could play in the central defense, suggesting that Upamecano will be given a break and Pavard will move into the central defense, and then Masraoui will start on the right. I think Pavard will play as a right back because Masraoui doesn't seem to be at the level he was at before he was sidelined for a lot of time. So, but at least, I mean, there's a bit of doubt. Obviously, he isn't as attractive if he's playing as a central defender. So that makes me worry a bit. And then, obviously, I also considered Michel Weiser, but didn't mention him because he's such a popular player, and I wanted to suggest some differentials instead. But he's a very good option for Bremen's Saturday night fixture against Schalke. But I have to say that looks like Werder have some problems up front. Füllkrug, not sure he will play this time either. Still struggling with an injury, and Marvin Duksch is actually ill at the moment. So if they'll be without Duksch and Füllkrug, that'll be a pretty big blow to their attacking play, and Weiser could suffer from that. So that's a bit of a concern too. But both Weiser and Pavard are good options too, nevertheless.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one question from Jay, so FPL Gunnosaurus, in regards to pretty much what you've covered, Rune. So the Bayern game looks like a good game to target. How do you feel about a Cancelo-Pavard double up? Are they likely to be preferred fullback pairing now? Pretty much answered that for you, Jay, we believe. So it doesn't look like a bad shout.
No, I think they'll start as the fullbacks, but as I said, there's also the possibility of moving Pavard into the central defense at his favorite position, and then play Masraoui on the right.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. That's grand. Quick question in from Jonna. Benjamin Henriks for
Yeah,
Leipzig, given their home game, something that
yeah,
you'd consider there, Rune. He has been in pretty good form, actually. Got a few assists, I think.
yeah. He
Quite
was.
recently.
I had him. I had him as my mid-price pick before Marco Rose's press conference, where Rose actually said that Henriks is a doubt, and
Right.
for me, it doesn't look like he will start. Actually, might be part of the squad, but unless we get some positive news for Leipzig in regards to his chances of starting tomorrow, then I don't think certain enough that he will start. Unfortunately, because he's been in amazing form fantasy wise, and he was certainly a player I had looked at
Yeah.
too, but would probably steer clear considering his injury concern.
Absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. So moving on to midfielders then. So any midfielder questions, please pop them in the chat whilst Runa's going through his next three picks. So starting with budget, and it looks like it's going to be a Wolfsburg midfielder to start with.
Yeah, Felix Mecha had a good game like most other attacking Wolfsburg players last week against a very poor Bochum side, has to be said too. But nevertheless, I think it's clear that that a 5-1 win like that should give plenty of confidence to Wolfsburg. And yeah, they're playing the last game of the match day, and what I thought was, if you want an option from that game to sub in, I think Mecha is a pretty good shout. Wolfsburg are playing at home. Mainz are in good form, so I think
Yeah.
it could be a close game. But considering Mecha's price tag, you can't really go wrong with him. He's really cheap, very good value for money, I think. So if you're looking to pick up a player from this game, I think he's a quite solid option. Mid-price pick is Daichi Kamada, who is, I mean, it's a pretty big risk because
It is
obviously
a risk.
both Eintracht and Kamada are in bad form, and he has no future at the club. So that is kind of a concern, I think, both for Eintracht and for us fantasy managers. Nevertheless, we all know what he's capable of, and if he starts at home against Augsburg, who are again dealing with a lot of injuries, I think he will start personally. Then he has huge potential as a differential because his ownership is down to 3%, and Frankfurt are considered pretty big favorites to win this game. So if you're willing to take a bit of a risk that could pay off, I think Kamada is maybe worth considering. Premium pick is Nkunku, who feels good to mention him again. He's been eased back into action this time, unlike last time where Leipzig played him a bit too early maybe and suffered an injury setback. He's been eased back this time, and he's expected to return to the starting 11 for Leipzig. Szoboszlai is suspended. Olmo is struggling with a knock, so seems pretty certain that Nkunku will start this time. And on paper, at least, it's a good game for Leipzig against Hoffenheim at home. I don't really need to talk Nkunku up. I think one of the best players in the league when he's in form. We all know that. So obviously he's a very intriguing option now that he's back, and still, even if he's not at 100% yet, he could still make a huge difference. The only concern I have is that Leipzig have a few injuries actually, in addition to Henriks. Olmo is also doubtful, and Guardiola is doubtful too. So, I mean, that's making them less favorites than before, but still, it is Nkunku we're talking about. So I think
That's true.
might be time to move him back in this week.
Yeah, you're not wrong about it being tough this week. So many injuries going around, so many teams that are off colour that you would usually bank on. Frankfurt at home to Augsburg, even with the injuries, does not fill me with confidence the way that they've been playing. But yeah, as you say, completely in terms of a differential pick, Kamada's got the quality, hasn't he? And it does feel great to say Nkunku again, but pick him whilst you can, basically, because he'll be going away, unfortunately, to a mid-table English team who, maybe he's regretting his decision.
Yeah.
The happy-go-lucky Chelsea spending spree has not worked, has it? And we can all laugh at that. Certainly, I am. But anyway, we'll just come to some questions as well before we move on. We've got some in the live chat, and I think there's a few from Jay in regards to midfield. So first one I'll put up on screen. Is it worth keeping Baumgartner, and is it time for Wirtz to return to the squad? Pretty sure that Florian Wirtz has returned to training. Runa, you'll no doubt know more than myself, and Baumgartner has been obviously one of the brightest sparks for Hoffenheim, but they're just starting to hit another little bit of a dip after they picked up results.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it could be worth keeping him, especially given Leipzig's injury problems. He's playing out of position as a striker against a side with a lot of injuries. So, I mean, I'm actually, it's one of the decisions I'm thinking about myself at the moment. And Leipzig's injuries have certainly made me consider keeping him even more. Because in principle, he's a player who can do well against any opponent, especially playing out of position. So I think that's worth considering. But at the same time, midfield is a part of the squad where there are a lot of interesting options, a lot of good options, and one of them being Florian Wirtz also, as you mentioned. And yeah, Wirtz is also, as well known, an amazing player who can do well against any opponent. Unfortunately, he's a bit of a rotation risk as long as Leverkusen are in the Europa League, and now they're at the semi-final stage. So
yeah, 100%.
Probably could see him getting rested again ahead of some of their crucial Europa League games. This week he'll probably play from the start, I think. But the matchup is it's rather difficult. It's Union Berlin away, pretty tough away game. As they're known to be pretty good at home, Union Berlin. So
absolutely,
yeah, obviously a player with a lot of quality, but there are a lot of other midfield options as well. Some of them even have better matchups, I think. So that's worth keeping in mind.
Lovely stuff. Moving on to a question from Yona, and what a question it is as well. What do you guys think about Endo from Stuttgart, Captain Fantastico? I think he'll do real well this weekend against Gladbach. I completely agree. I think Endo could be a great shout. One of the better players in what was a pretty poor game on that Friday night match, as you said, Runa, against Salzburg. I think he and Wagnerman were, probably the better of the VfB players. But what do you reckon, Runa? I mean, in terms of the duels one as well, you can obviously get extra points, I guess, from that. And
yeah, he can. And it's actually funny that you're mentioning him, Jona, because I just had a look at his recent games points wise, and he's actually done pretty well despite Stuttgart not winning a lot of games and drawing a lot of games and losing some of them. He's actually been quite consistent and has had some pretty good hauls too. Despite the fact that he's probably somewhat of like a defensive option to have in midfield compared to some of the more attacking players you could consider. I think that he's arguably the best shout if you want a Stuttgart midfielder this week. I'm not feeling confident about Führig starting. Then there's Enzo Milo, he could start and he's playing in a more advanced role, but Endo is just very involved, as you say, Roy, not just in terms of passes to a shot or getting involved defensively. He's also winning duels and doing well defensively. So I think he's a bit of an overlooked fantasy asset, actually, who could indeed do pretty well this week.
Very good. And just moving to another question from Jona in regards to Joshua Kimmich. So, yeah, worth going for. Bayern, we talked about it on the Monday show in terms of the crisis that Bayern are going through. But as you say, the matchup just kind of draws your eyes immediately, doesn't it, Runa? Yeah. And there's points to be taken from that match, surely.
Yeah, definitely. So he's as we talked about last week, he's on penalties now too. So that only increases his value. The only thing that makes me a bit concerned is that looks like Goretzka will miss the game, and I could. He picked up a knock, I think, in training today, and I could see Musiala playing besides Kimmich, and Musiala is probably he's obviously more of an attacking player than Goretzka is. Goretzka,
Yeah.
I mean, can cover more for Kimmich if Kimmich goes forward at times. So maybe that will give Kimmich a more defensive responsibility this game. If Musiala will be his midfield partner. So that's my only concern. But then on the other hand, I think the matchup is so good that it's hard to see him not doing well. So definitely worth going for, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one final comment from Jay, which was asked before the show, is Szoboszlai to Nkunku the most obvious move ever to those who own him? Would you double up on Leipzig with Werner, who was great at home last time? So yeah, with Szoboszlai being suspended, Rune, obviously we've already talked about Nkunku, but would you double up with Werner, who's as you know, Jay correctly put, at home he was very good, but again can have these dips in form or can be very inconsistent at the very least.
Yeah, that's my main concern with Werner. I've picked him a number of times this season where he hasn't delivered, and that just feels really bad because those three attacking positions are, I mean, so important, and some of the most important players that you have in your team. But obviously, it's a good matchup. Leipzig had those injuries I talked about earlier. That's a bit off-putting, I think. But Werner, in principle, is a good option on paper. I just have a few other players that I maybe prefer. One of them, I'm going to talk about one of them afterwards, Daniel Malen. I would like a Dortmund option from the Friday night fixture, either Malen or Adeyemi would be nice to have, I think. Also think Moani could be worth moving back into my team for the Augsburg game. Pretty good game for him. So not sure I will find space for Werner, but obviously could do well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously talking of strikers, we shall finish on them with Rune, your first 3 picks, then we'll come to any extra questions. And it looks like you've got a great budget pick in there as well.
Yeah, my budget pick is Guirassy from Stuttgart. And yeah, as I said earlier, Gladbach have huge injury problems, and I think there's a lot more at stake for Stuttgart here. So they'll be desperate to win the game, and Guirassy is the main man up front. He wins duels too, usually does. I mean, his floor is actually pretty good, even if he doesn't score. He gets points from doing other stuff on the pitch. So I think he's probably one of the better budget mid-price picks this week. I think I expect Stuttgart to win the game, and since Guirassy is their striker, I think he could have a good game. And then moving on to two players who are in the same price category, actually. I struggled a bit with finding a mid-price pick this week, so it's 2 rather expensive picks, the next 2 coming up. But anyway, Daniel Malen in amazing form, as we've all seen. Seems like he's finally performing at the level Dortmund were hoping he would when they signed him from PSV. 6 goals in his last 5 Bundesliga games. That's pretty amazing. So against a Bochum side that conceded 5 goals against Wolfsburg last week, really struggled there. I think he could do well again. And then I have Kingsley Coman as my premium pick, and that's because I wanted a player from Bayern. I think it's pretty clear that having a Bayern asset this week up front is vital, but the question is who to get. For me, it's not as self-explanatory as it was in the past, where you could just get Lewandowski, or earlier in the season where you could just get Musiala and keeping in your squad for the whole game, basically. It's a bit of a different situation, especially since Tuchel took over and Choupo-Moting has been struggling with injury. I think it's been difficult to find that
Oh, we seem to have lost Runa midstream. So just in case any questions do come in, please do get them in whilst we're waiting for Runa. I think he has actually just popped up in the background and
Yeah,
he's back.
sorry, I don't know what happened. Connection
No
issue, perhaps.
problem.
Anyway, as I was saying, I think Coman is a great call this Kingsley Coman is a great call this week. He's predicted to start by all sources, and I think he could really terrorize Peter Pekerik down the flank this game. With all due respect to Pekerik, even the best fullbacks in the world have trouble containing Coman. So I think, given his age and the fact that he's maybe not the fastest player anymore, Pickerick, that is, I think he could be in for a pretty tough game against the Frenchman. So at the same time, I think owned by just 5%, he's also a differential. So I think it's between Coman and Sané for me. Coman could be a pretty cheeky differential.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. There's no live questions at the moment in the comments. So if you've got any questions, fire them in. We'll probably be on show for just another couple of minutes. But there is one to get to, which was again asked before the show, which was from Jay. And it is in relation to Kolo Muani. So Frankfurt haven't won in 8 league games, but at the same time, Muani has still been very consistent. No brainer at home to Augsburg, still with some injury issues. A very well put and thought out question there from Jay. So thank you for that. Runa, I assume you would certainly agree with what Jay has put there, but is he going to make your squad? I'm sure you're tempted at the very least.
Sorry, was the question about Moani?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
Yes, well, it's going to include him or not. Yeah,
I was just focusing on Jonas' question in the chat for a moment. Anyway,
okay, I'll get to that.
But yeah, I also talked about Moani earlier, and I'm tempted to move him back into my team. A bit concerned about Frankfurt's form though, and I think Augsburg have a habit of getting points and winning the games that they shouldn't be winning on paper. They're quite funny team in some ways, but yeah, Moani is definitely one of the better strikers this week for me, and one of the strikers I'm considering.
Yeah, absolutely. Augsburg just have this, whether you can call it a habit, a skill of winning the games at the perfect time to just float above the relegation zone. They'll always somehow be connected with the relegation race, but at the same time, they are superbly good at getting themselves out of trouble at the perfect moment. So yeah, as Runa correctly mentions, we do have one more question in the live chat in regards to some striker action from Jona. So given that Union have nothing to play for but the Bundesliga and Behrens is out, then Becker ought to be a good buy at home to Leverkusen, who might have one eye on Roma. So again, yeah, very good question, well put, Jona. Runa, now that you've had time to focus in on that question, what are your thoughts on Geraldo Becker, who took his goal last weekend sublimely well?
Yeah, I somewhat agree with the point made, but at the same time, I think Leverkusen have been doing consistently well in the Bundesliga, even while focusing on Europa League too. I think Alonso has managed the squad very well, and sometimes he started teams and you thought, hey, maybe he's rotating too much for this game, but still they're getting the results. It's working out for Leverkusen at the moment. They're playing with a lot of confidence. So yeah, sure. I mean, Becker is a pretty good buy. Union are very focused on the Bundesliga, surely, and getting a good position at the top of the table. But at the same time, I think Leverkusen are in pretty amazing form. Yeah, I think yeah, he's a pretty good pick, but I also think there are other maybe more intriguing players with better matchups.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So there's no more questions in the live chat. There's no more that are coming before the show. So if you've got any others and you're watching post us being live, pop them in the comments, and we'll make sure that we get to them. But that's a very nice time for us to round up and end the show. So thank you to everyone that's watched this evening and put questions in. Been really appreciated. We love this fancy football community that we've built up throughout the seasons, and it's grown ever more this season. So thank you very much. Really hoping for a big finish. I know Runa is, in terms of his eyes on the World League prize, currently sitting in 6th place. So amazing stuff. So you'll be very wise to listen to what Runa has had to say this evening. Make sure you smash a like on the video. As I mentioned, any comments or questions, do it subsequently. Make sure you subscribe using that red button. And a reminder, as I said at the start of the show, we are doing Bochum versus Dortmund as a watch along tomorrow evening, 5 minutes from before kickoff. We will be live, myself and Mark. Huge game. So really looking forward to doing that. So make sure you come along and say hello and enjoy the game with us. Of course, as always, check out the Twitter at OverTheBarFB and OverTheBar Extra, and the Wiz, www.otbfootball.net. And all there is to say is thank you to everyone for tuning in. Hope you all have a pleasant evening and a weekend of Bundesliga football. So cheers all, and catch you next time.